I think Islam Makhachev is the greatest lightweight of all time. And in this video, I'm going to use these stats on screen to defend that point and tell you why I think so. Now, let's look at Khabib and Islam and settle the debate. Who's the greatest lightweight of all time? Now, listen. The first thing to point out is that Khabib was undefeated. He was 13-0. He never lost. Islam does have a loss really early in his career to Adriano Martins, but I don't think that matters too much. All right, let's get into it. So, Islam's opponents, a combined record of 369 and 151. Khabib's opponents, 299 and 148. So, Islam's opponents have a little bit better of a win-to-loss ratio. So, that's the first point I like to make. Islam has, at least by record sense, beat better opponents. UFC record, Islam 15 and 1. UFC record for Khabib 13 and 0. And they both have 3 title defenses as it stands. Islam is the current standing champion, so if he defends against Arman in January, he'll have 4. But both standing at 3 title defenses. Islam has more submissions, he has more KO TKOs, and Khabib has 1 more decision. Let's look at Khabib's wins. So he came to the UFC, he beats Kamal Shaurus. No one knows who that is. Don't pretend like you do. No one's that hardcore. Then he beats Gleison Tibau, and that was a really close fight. A lot of people thought he lost that fight. Then he elbows Thiago Tavares' head into oblivion. That was actually a brutal finish. Beats Abel Trujillo, beats Pat Hilly, comfortably beats Rafael dos Anjos, destroys Darrell Horcher, destroys Michael Johnson while talking to Dana White, destroys Edson Barboza, beats Ali Quinta for the title. Then he, at UFC 229, he beats Conor McGregor by a 4th round submission. Then he submits Dustin Poirier. Then he submits Justin Gaethje. So the end of Khabib's title reign was the most impressive. His 3 title defenses against Conor, Dustin, and Gaethje. But Conor, Dustin, and Gaethje, they're not the highest level, you know, in terms of Conor McGregor at the time. Yeah, he had just come off the boxing match with Floyd. He wasn't motivated. He wasn't motivated McGregor. Nah, I'm not going to sit here and clown. Khabib beat a really good version of Conor McGregor. That's just what it is. He beat a really good version of Dustin Poirier, one of the best. And he beat a really good version of Justin Gaethje, probably in his prime years. Khabib's title run, it wasn't that impressive. And the reason it wasn't that impressive is because he retired so early. He only had 3 defenses, and he won the belt off Aya Quinta. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I think Khabib's title run was okay. I sound like I'm hating. Listen, Khabib's title run was impressive, but it wasn't long enough, and that's what goes against him. He retired so fast. He got 3 title defenses, and he got out of there because his father passed, and he didn't want to fight anymore without his father in his corner. That's fair enough. But let's look at Islam Makhachev's run. So he comes to the UFC. He beats Leo Kuntz. Nobody knows who that is. He loses to Adriano Martins. He gets knocked out. Fair enough. Then he beats Chris Wade. He has a interesting fight with Nick Lentz. He also beats Gleison Tibau. Win against Kajan Johnson. No one knows who that is. He beats Arman Sarukian. Very good win. Beats Davi Ramos. Very good win. Great grappler. Beats Drew Dober. Lightweight journeyman. Beats Thiago Moises. Beats Dan Hooker by a submission. Then he TKOs Bobby Green on the ground. Then he submits Charles Oliveira. Then he beats Alexander Volkanovski by decision and then knocks him out in the second fight. Fair enough on short notice. And then he beats Dustin Poirier. Now, if you look at the 2 lists, I think personally that Islam Makhachev has faced a better competition. And he's also been able to submit more people and even knock out more people than Khabib in his UFC run. He has more wins. He has the same amount of title defenses. And I think his list of competition is a little bit stronger than Khabib's. Also, I do feel like Islam's the more well-rounded fighter. He has better striking than Khabib, and he probably has better. I don't know if I want to say better grappling. Islam has better Khabib is more ferocious. Was more ferocious on the ground in terms of like his ground and pound, and just like wanting to smash your face in while you're on the floor. Whereas when Islam gets you to the ground, he's trying to get to your back, get a body triangle, and maybe submit you, maybe go for a Kimura, stuff like that. So Islam's focused on more position over submission, whereas Khabib was focused on, I'm going to drill your head through the ground. And Khabib was more dominant. Islam's lost more rounds than Khabib, but when we're talking about greatness, in my opinion, we're talking about the levels of competition you beat, how many people you finished, and your record, of course, and how many title defenses you have. And they both have the same amount of title defenses. And when you take that into account, with Khabib being 13-0 and Islam being 15-1, also, not to mention, Islam is now past Khabib's win streak in the lightweight division. He's at 14. If he beats Sarukian, he'd be at 15 wins. He's only 2 wins away from tying the all-time record for UFC win streaks. Anderson Silva's at 16. So, yeah, if you look at Khabib's resume, it's a little weak, you know, compared to Islam's, in my opinion. They're close. They're close. I know Islam's early UFC career wasn't the best. Leo Kuntz, Chris Wade, Nick Lentz, Gleison Tebow, Gaja Johnson. Those wins aren't that great. But if you look at the top 8 wins, 9 wins, those are insane. And that's what I think brings Islam above Khabib in terms of lightweight GOAT status. Another thing is Islam beat the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Alexander Volkanovski, at the time. He beat him by decision in his backyard. Very impressive. I know it was a close fight, and Alexander Volkanovski did good, but let's not forget, Islam won that fight, and he KO'd him in the rematch. Fair enough, on like 11 days' notice, but he still KO'd Volkanovski in the rematch. And before that, he beat Charles Oliveira, who was also pound-for-pound in the top 5 at the time. He submitted the submission king. He knocked him down on the feet and then finished him on the ground. So Islam has shown to be, I think, a little bit more well-rounded than Khabib. He has better striking than Khabib, although Khabib's striking defense was really underrated. He never got cut open. He's never bled in a UFC fight, which that itself is an insane stat. But as I said, in terms of like all-time status, I think Islam clears it. He has his opponents had a better combined record. He has more UFC wins. He has a longer UFC win streak. He has more finishes than Khabib in the UFC. He's beaten more pound-for-pound fighters in his title run. I mean, the list goes on. I don't know what else I can say. Just the wins over Volkanovski and Oliveira. Like, if you look at his recent wins, he beat Poirier, Volk twice, and Charles Oliveira versus Khabib beating Gaethje, Poirier, and Conor McGregor. So I think Charles's last 3 opponents he beat is more impressive than the last 3 opponents that Khabib beat. I think that Charles Oliveira win is better than the Conor McGregor win. I think a Volkanovski win is better than a Justin Gaethje win, and then they both beat Dustin Poirier. Granted, Khabib had a lot easier time with Poirier and choked him out in the 3rd round, whereas Islam kind of went to war with Poirier and ended up getting a choke in the 5th round, but they both finished him either way. But I don't think Khabib's dominance alone is enough to say that he's greater than Islam. I think Islam is what modern mixed martial arts is in terms of skill level. Like, Islam is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now, rightfully so. I think he's the most well-rounded fighter we've ever seen in the UFC in terms of wrestling, submission, boxing, striking defense, and grappling, and everything, kickboxing. Like, Islam is the full package. There's nothing he can't do. And he can submit you. Like, I know people talk about Volkanovski as being like well-rounded, but Volkanovski doesn't have submissions. Islam has knockouts. He has submissions. He has hands. He has kicks. He has everything, wrestling. Whereas Khabib, he would just take you down, and if you would defend the takedown, he would just take you down again and then just pound you on the ground until you either gave up your back and gave up a submission or he TKO'd you. Khabib didn't really have much knockout power. I know he knocked down Conor McGregor in the 2nd round, but he didn't KO him. Islam KO'd Volk with a head kick. He destroyed Bobby Green on the ground, fair enough. And yeah, he has some KOs in his career. I think he KO'd Gleison Tebow back in the day. And he has more submissions. So I think in terms of I sound like I'm repeating myself over and over, but I think all-time status, you have to give it to Islam. At the current state, I think Islam is the greatest lightweight of all time. And I think if he beats Arman Tsarukyan in January, which I think pretty sure that's the fight that's slated because Khabib himself has said his next fight, that's going to just cement that further. But in the current status, I think the #1 greatest lightweight of all time is Islam Makhachev. In the 2nd spot, obviously, you have Khabib. And in the 3rd spot, you have Charles Oliveira, probably, with his insane 11-fight run and 10 finishes. That was one of the greatest title runs ever in terms of like excitement and finishes. But Yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if I'm a casual. Can't wait to see what people say and like why they would put Khabib over Islam. Because like I said, if you look at these two lists of fighters and the combined records of the opponents and the records and the win streak and the finishes, I don't see how you put Khabib over Islam. I think Islam is the greatest lightweight of all time. That's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Call me a casual in the comments. I love it. Thank you.